Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion, as you can tell from the top there. Continuing my trek through the classic 90s show, Batman the Animated Series. Good old BTAS. This is episode 12. It's Never Too Late. The teleplay by this was by Garen Wolf. And joining our main cast, we have Paul Dooley voicing Father Michael, Eugene Roche as Arnold Stromwell, and of course, Catherine Hellman as Connie Stromwell in a very quick voice role. Interesting to be talking about her again when I talked about her off and on a bunch when I reviewed Everybody Loves Raymond. So let's see if any other familiar names from that show pop up, but I doubt it. Anyway, this is an episode that deals with a mob war coming to an end. It deals with an older gangster dealing with Rupert Thorne, which the main thing I was wondering as I was watching this episode, like, following the Two-Face fiasco, Rupert Thorne is still on the streets being able to do everything? Well, I guess even following that fiasco, there wasn't enough evidence to hold him, or the fact that Harvey was the one involved that got the whole thing thrown out. Even though you would think part of it would be like, yeah, no. Well, the older one is, of course, Arnold Stromwell, who he's designed like a really old school gangster. And the way he looks, it kind of reminds me of one of the gangsters from Mask of the Phantasm. I guess they kind of use a similar character design with him. There's similarities, but there's also differences, like a little bit more heavy set one. Now, their mob war is televised, as a lot of this stuff is. Now, Mr. Stromwell is worried because his son is missing, and he has a feeling that Rupert Thorne had something to do with it, so he tells his men, tell Thorne I want a meeting with him. And of course Rupert Thorne is all giddy. They have a meeting in public at a small restaurant. There's only one person there. They kick him out. Even from the beginning, I'm like, I bet that's going to be Bruce in disguise. And then the moment you hear the voice, like, oh yeah, it's Bruce in disguise. Well, it looks like he planted a bug there. And the thing with that, it's nice to see Batman doing all of his detective work using disguises. And from the bug, we hear that Rupert Thorne is planning this to be an ambush on Stromwell. Stromwell shows up, and it looks like it's just going to be a meeting between them, and then Stromwell does what you would expect any father to do, and he snaps at me. He's like, where's my son? I know you did something to my son. And of course, Rupert Thorne is like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't go after families. Yeah, the last episodes, I'm calling you a liar on that, Rupert, but he seems sincere. And for a little bit, it makes you wondering, is Rupert actually being sincere here, and he has no idea where Stromwell's son is? Or is there more to it? As we're going to find out, there's more to it, but it's not having to do with Thorne's involvement, at least directly. Now his minions come in. Batman comes in, saves the day before the place goes up in smoke. And Batman, as he's getting Stromwell out of there, and they're going through the rooftops, he really shows how strong he is compared to an average human, because a lot of the acrobatics Batman does would take someone at peak human performance to do, depending on where they're doing it. But the fact that he's doing this carrying another human being that's of about average size really is showing off his musculature, because he's doing this carrying another person that's at least over 100 pounds, probably under 2, but in that range, so that shows it. So that was a nice little thing to note. Now, Batman eventually does get to Stromwell, but it takes a moment. He basically has to put him over there kicking and screaming. Now, a couple times throughout the episode, Stromwell is thinking back to a thing from his childhood where he is saved by his brother, who we find out by the end is a priest. Now, the reason here is that they're on the train tracks, and Arnold almost gets hit by one after dodging another, but then his brother saves him, but loses his leg in the process. Now, this flashback is shown a couple different times, once when he's at the train tracks, and another time when something bad is happening, and that's when the brothers reconcile. Now, this is just segue into that reconciliation, but it also shows that he is a gangster that originally came from nothing, and he did rise up the ranks and become a boss. Now, some of the stuff he sells is drugs, which I'm actually surprised they mention drugs just in general. I know they're not going to say heroin, they're not going to say cocaine on a show that's made for Fox Kids, especially with some of the things we've talked about with the censorship and all that. But the fact they let them say the word drugs, I was surprised at. Probably because in generalities, most people are going to know what they're talking about, but even if they don't, they're like, okay, it's not good. But we can speak in the general term. Well, of course, Strummel denies this. Like, I don't sell drugs. I don't sell drugs. I was never proven. I manufacture candy. Doing his usual shtick. Well, from that, we can guess he probably does sell drugs. And based on what we're going to see, I'm going to assume he probably sells heroin and its derivatives. Now, Batman takes Arnold to a rehab clinic, and who happens to be there? His son and his ex-wife, or soon-to-be ex-wife. And we see he got hooked. Now, they don't really say it, but the dialogue hints enough that the son got hooked on the drugs that Arnold's empire is selling. So, indirectly, it is Arnold's fault, and you can see he's beating himself up on that. Now, at first, with all this, he doesn't really want to help Batman. He kind of double crosses him, takes him to where he has dummy books, which leads to a line. These are dummy books, and you're the dummy! Pulls out his rifle. And, of course, they get attacked by Rupert Thorne and his minions there. Now, Batman's trump card in trying to talk Arnold into cooperating with the police is, of course, his brother Michael, because he knows there is a relationship between them. How? I don't know. Probably due to the relationships that Batman has made with the people of Gotham on the street since he's been there, at least with some people in some regard. And probably having talked with Michael at some point, he probably found out that he is Arnold's brother. And he tells him, like, I'm probably going to need your help tonight. Well, during the course of this, Michael and Arnold talk. They reconcile. So why'd you help me? You knew I was no good or anyway. And this is where we find out they're brothers, because originally it makes it look like they're just good friends, but this conversation there, we find out they're actually brothers, and the back and forth, and of course the voice acting really makes you feel for these two. And they reconcile just in time to avoid getting killed by Rupert Thorne. The police show up, and one of the last things that Arnold says in it is like, Commissioner, I would like to make a statement. Now, considering that they own and operate their own separate empires in the criminal underworld, makes me wonder what he could say that would help the police put Rupert Thorne away. Maybe there's some business dealings they have that his testimony might be able to get Thorne put behind bars. Now, of course, considering how early in the show we are, and the fact that Rupert does make more appearances, we know it's not going to stick. But part of that we'll get to later when we cover other parts of this show. Now, an interesting thing is that the relationship between Arnold and his brother, it bears a resemblance to the film Angels with Dirty Faces from 1938, which revolves around a gangster and a priest who are best friends in childhood, but they find themselves on opposite sides as adults. Now, based on that, they take that relationship and make it closer one more step. Now, they probably made it seem like they were going with that route with friends, but turned into brothers, and I think that's part of the strength of that episode. And then there's also ties to A Christmas Carol and It's a Wonderful Life. Batman's acting as the guardian angel, and he's showing a cruel man familiar places and jogging old memories of his past in an attempt to change his ways. It's kind of funny there, considering in the Christmas episode, Batman had never seen It's a Wonderful Life. So it's kind of interesting to have that little dichotomy there. But maybe considering he'd watched it by this point, he's like, oh yeah, let's see what I do. Oh, what about that movie they made me watch at Christmas? Maybe I can use some of that. And overall, this is another decent episode, and it shows that Batman, especially this early in his career, he will go out of his way to try and rehabilitate people. Even someone as deep into the criminal life and high up there as a boss, who is probably, even if he's never done it directly, has ordered his men to commit atrocities against people, he will go out of his way to help them when they need it. And I think that's a good thing about Batman there. He's not just a dark, broody, dark knight. He is someone, he's a human with a conscience and feelings. That's really all there is to say about this. The animation's pretty decent. I mean, voice acting is what does it. That combined with the lighting and certain parts of it, should I say shading because it's animation. And of course, the music, it really does make it feel like a very noir esque episode. And of course, if you're going to borrow part of a plot from a film that is from when film noir started, you might as well have it have that tone. And that's really all there is to say about this episode. Next time, though, we're going to be dealing with an episode that is considered by many to be the worst in the series. That, of course, is I've Got a Batman in My Basement. And other than that being the first appearance of the Penguin, I do not really remember much about it other than the general premise. So we'll see what my thoughts are. Whether I say, it's okay, or whether I'm like, yeah, this episode sucks. But that won't be until next time. Till then, everybody.